Good afternoon.
Good evening. Welcome to being here on our last episode of 2022.
That's right.
Thank you for listening.
Yes.
And hey, I'm upset. You're upset. Everyone's upset.
Well, that's not quite accurate.
We're not upset.
I'm not upset.
That's today's title.
Right. But I used to be upset all the time.
And it was annoying when people weren't. And we wanted to invite people into our upset.
Well, just think about it. Or don't think about it. Complaining is a form of upset. If you're complaining about anything, you're upset.
When you really get upset, it's like those complaints are the tip of the upset iceberg.
That's right.
Yeah. And I really saw it recently with somebody who they were upset about a circumstance in their life. And they were really, really annoyed that the people around them weren't upset about the same circumstance. Because if they couldn't pull their friends and family into that upset, then they would have to look at themselves as the generator of the upset rather than the circumstance was wrong.
Well, that's the truth of it, really. You're upset and you look outside yourself to find a justifier for it. Some justifiers are better than others.
That's true. Let's listen today. I know both of us have already said things that are likely to send you off thinking. Thinking is not an asset here. Let's just listen.
Well, thinking isn't a problem. The game here is to bring yourself back to listening to what's being said rather than get lost in your thought processes.
I mean, thinking really is inevitable, but how long and how far you follow down that path is really up to you.
Yes.
We'll say something, it'll trigger a response, a mental response, and you can follow it.
Or you can bring yourself back to the next moment.
Which is a really good asset or skill set to develop, because at some point your thoughts are disagreeing with your circumstance, and if you follow them, you jump on the upset train. So while you're not upset, you may as well.
We're going to give you a get out of jail card free.
And you don't have to play Monopoly.
Right.
Yeah, that is listening with your ears. I know in this format, since we're not releasing this with the video version, although we are creating them with it, so maybe someday, you can't follow it with your eyes. So really tune in to hear what's being said from the speaker's point of view.
Right.
Ready for our first guest?
I am.
All right, Julie, welcome to being here, and tell people where you're zooming in from.
Hi, I'm zooming in from Yonkers, New York.
Welcome. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. So what came to mind when I saw this show title was, you guys mentioned like that an upset can be like the tip of an upset can be a complaint. So I saw that I was complaining about somebody that I work with. I am a high school principal and I work in a campus building where there are 5 different high schools. And over the years, there have been, ongoing issues that we've resolved, and then they've come back again of students, like student discipline problems across the campus. So a big one is really just students cutting classes and hanging out in stairwells or hanging out in hallways that are not part of their school. And I saw that recently I've really been being right that one of the other schools isn't doing enough to manage their students. And it's just been like playing out in my head. And the other day we were doing kind of a group of people from each school were walking around the building to see if we could find students being where they're not supposed to be and then address it. And my rightness played out because we found so many students from this particular school. And I I addressed it with someone from that school who was there. I said, you know, you really have a lot of students from your school here, and you're not really addressing them. Like, you're not stopping them to say, hey, what are you doing here? And later that principal reached out to me and said, I want to talk to you about how you're speaking to my staff and students. So I was like, okay. I was really, at first I was really being right about that when I got that text message, and I didn't yet get to speak to her about it because a few other things happened. She got an unexpected visitor, but yeah, I want to talk about that.
The she being the other principal.
Yeah.
Well, you may want to start with an apology,
Okay.
because if she wasn't up to addressing it, she wouldn't have sent one of her staff around with you to find the kids. So she is addressing it. It just hasn't been taken care of, and it's not handled yet. Did that make sense? You're nodding, but you have to speak out loud.
Sorry. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
And you know, when you, I know we're talking something specific here now, and it's like problem solution, and it's also advice.
And transformation isn't problem solution oriented, and we don't normally give advice because you are perfect and you set your universe up exactly as you have to have those upsets to save you from looking at something in your life. And upsets are always more convenient to look at than the circumstances that you've created that produce the upset.
So let's step one step back from the circumstances of the situation, and let's give you the reality that out of the 5 campuses, that campus has the largest discipline problem with their kids, and they have more kids generally hanging around the stairwells. And let's have that be a fact. Your frustration level about that is absolutely yours. You've taken the fact and
you've taken the circumstance and use that as the justifier for getting upset.
Yes.
Yes. So that's the whole thing. You see, look, life shows up the way it does, and it never shows up the way you'd prefer. And even if it does show up the way you prefer, that's a very short-lived moment, because then it usually shifts and changes, and it definitely reaches that place where you would prefer it to be different.
If we take one step further back, Julie, if this principal has 20 calculuses for what a successful school is, I'm just making something up, and this one is the bottom of the list, and you're being angry or frustrated about or talking through that frustration, then that tells me that if you have 20 calculuses for a successful school on your list, anything that falls apart, you are hard on yourself about. You don't look at it neutrally, like what needs to be handled here. You have a tendency to get upset and angry with yourself.
That's true.
With yourself first.
Because you were only going to speak to her and her staff the way you speak to you internally.
Although you'll probably be kinder to them than you.
True.
You know, one thing is to, like, if I said to you, look, Julie, you have a problem with your kids. This is, you know, you're not handling this very well. Is very different from, I found myself frustrated because I keep finding these kids in the stairwell and I don't know how to manage it. So I can best support your school and best support our school. It's very different to make it about me than it is to, metaphorically speaking, shake your finger at them for being wrong.
That's true.
And we've all been trained to shake our finger at ourselves and other people.
That is the standard way of relating to life for most people, is to blame something else outside themselves for the upsetting circumstances. But if you take responsibility as though you've created the environment that this shows up in as a function of how you're relating to life, then nothing needs to be upsetting. I spent the day yesterday out with a friend on his boat, and the fish were not cooperative. And when I got home last night, we had a message, text exchange. And he was into his third martini because he was so upset that he could not produce fish when the fish were not cooperative. There's nothing you can do about the circumstances. They show up the way they do. Your response or reaction to those are in your hands. Now, you can do what people normally do and get upset with it, but the upset doesn't change the circumstance. Your well-being, well brought to the circumstance, can fix it, can have it not be problematic, but factual. It is a fact that there are kids in the stairwell.
And according to you, a fact that there's a higher proportion from that school than from your school and the other schools. That's a fact.
Right.
That's just facts. That's not a problem. It's just what is.
However, if we take one further step back, it's about list creation. I guarantee you there was a day or a succession of days where you were pre-upset, and then there was noise or disruption, and you went out and it was those dreaded students again from that stupid school. And it went on the list of
Complaint.
From within inside the upset. And then it doesn't actually get re-evaluated or re-looked at. It's just in the problem category. So you were like a gun that was preloaded, pre-charged, waiting to go off. And when you found those students,
The trigger was pulled.
The trigger was pulled and you exploded on this poor hapless staff person.
Right. Yeah, it's true. I don't even think that I experience their student. I do see their students a lot, but I also think another thing was that my own staff had been complaining to me about their students over time.
Well, that's beautiful. See, when you listen to other people's complaints,
I love that.
Even if you resist hearing them, in fact, if you resist hearing the complaint, it's even stronger because what you resist persists and grows stronger. So, and determines the way you see life. So if somebody says something about those students and you say, well, they're not that bad, but then you start to find justifiers to support that other point of view, that they really are that bad for being in the stairwells, smoking marijuana.
Or whatever, they're vaping. Well, you have this perfect opportunity in your building to keep stepping out of change and into transformation. Because in change, you have us and them.
You have good and bad. You have right and wrong.
Better and worse. And it's a hierarchy. And so, of course, the competitive nature of all of us, we want to be the best on the campus. And we, if we're upset, it's really nice to aim it at somebody else. And if your staff comes and complains about those students from that school, you want to defend them. We're ready to go to war for our faction. In transformation, it's win-win. So if that is true, that it's a fact that they have a higher proportion, how do you have them win as opposed to shaking your finger at them?
See, if you get that you're creating the whole thing, that you are the source of your experience, then how you interpret what shows up can be, what did I do to support this taking place?
And how can I support the resolution?
Rather than somebody did it wrong. See, what if it's all right? What if everything that's happening has to be happening exactly as it is in the current moment of your life?
For no other reason than the fact that it is.
Then if those students show up in the stairwells, then that's where they're supposed to be in that moment. See, if you operate as though everything is unfolding exactly as it should, there's no need to get yourself upset over it. The upset is usually generated in opposition to how things are showing up.
You told us something in a conversation that I will relate back to you some very generally. You were talking about a student who had been acting out and had been vaping from your school, and which of course they're not allowed to do. He had snuck in the device, and you said, you know, you're not supposed to do that, and I'm not going to embarrass you in front of your friends. We'll talk later. And he came to you, to whatever the meeting was, with the expectation that you were going to shake your finger, he was going to be in trouble, you were going to suspend him, and instead you had a conversation with him about what his dreams were for the future, what he wanted to produce. And he got inspired about himself rather than acting out. And I have a feeling you've not applied that level of compassion to your co-principals and their staff.
It's true, because it's so funny. Like with the students, I always have this image in my head of when I try to get them on my side. I think of how I try to get my dog to behave. I'm always like making little kissing noises. I'm, you know, come on, you know. It's like, yeah, it's like I don't really always do the same thing for adults.
Yeah, sure. But that's this whole thing about kindness. Really, it's really about being kind to them, as if they need a little love. Well, and so all this acting out is bringing attention that they are in deficit for love.
And if you go back to you went into education, and you certainly went into being a principal
and creating your own school
to make a difference, and because you have a passion for education. And if you make that as your starting assumption for everyone, and then sometimes they hit hurdles or they don't know how to expand when something's not working the way they would hope, it's like, how can you collaborate to support each other in being stellar and pass those hurdles?
Yeah, I love that.
So I love it too. And one of the things that I just want to underline before we complete this conversation with you, Julie, is that when we started the conversation with you, it was narrow. We had a problem, which was kids in the stairwell and your frustration, and the upcoming conversation with the principal whose students aren't behaving. And you were looking for a solution. And if we kept backing out and looking at how we approach things globally informs all the things that we perceive as problems.
Right. Very cool.
Thanks for being here and, lending your voice and your presence and your genuine question. It's really been a treat to be with you today.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad you said yes. I know I was speaking for both of us.
I know, but
it was so funny. Just as a side note, we often say we finish each other's sentences. There was somebody who we knew maybe 20, 30 years ago, and we were trying to remember their maiden name because, 25 years ago, she got married and we couldn't think of it. And then Shya said to me while we were in the bathroom this morning, oh, I remembered her maiden name. And immediately I heard it. It's like it was like, I said, oh, yes, it's because I pulled it right out of his head. So I know I was speaking for both of us.
Yes.
It's really cool.
Happy New Year.
Yes.
Thanks. Happy New Year.
Okay, here we go. It's time for our listener feedback spotlight, where we hear from one of our listeners about how transformation has impacted her life or his life.
If you want to learn more about our seminars, any of the upcoming virtual courses, visit transformationmadeeasy.com.
That is transformation made easy, easy.com.
I love it.
Thank you.
I'm Ralf.
And I'm Arne. We are from Cologne, Germany.
And I want to say thank you for everything that happened in the Keynes seminars, podcasts, radio shows over all those years that made the relationship that I have with Arne, that is not talking so much at the moment, possible.
And also our business life is great because we are working together, our private life, and also the books from the Keynes are a good to have it and to read all the stories from people, and we love it, and we will go on.
Do you want to have well-being with consistency? Connect with people all over the world from the comfort of your own home at Ariel and Shya's lively interactive Living Made Easy virtual seminars. Join any of their 2-hour online events or take a deep dive into the magic of being you at a virtual weekend seminar. Come on, let's connect. Find out more and register at transformationmadeeasy.com.
Well, we have just a couple of Living Made Easies at the beginning of the year before we head off for Costa Rica.
Mm-hmm.
We have Transformation in the New Year. It's our Monday evening and Tuesday evening on January 2nd and 3rd. And then we have a Monday on the 9th, and then we're off for Costa Rica, which is happening. It's your last chance if you want to join us, if things have come together or you decided you wanted to come.
You just need to do a seminar with us within this calendar year, and that was 2022. And
If you
there's
still
still time for joining us for transformational time and project management on January 7th and 8th, and that would fulfill the prerequisite.
And I'm really happy we're doing that seminar because I realize we usually do it mid-year, but I often think
people always make these New Year's resolutions to be different than they were last year,
and
then they show up being the same as they were the year and the year and the year before that.
So this is your opportunity to celebrate who you are as opposed to berate yourself, that finger shaking
for who you've been.
Shout out today to Safia. This was his suggestion. Kudos to you. And also, as long as we're here at the end of the year, thank you so much for all you've done to put together things throughout the year for
our videos.
And we really, really appreciate you.
Indeed, we do.
Let's take our next guest.
Please.
All right, Wendy, welcome to being here, and tell people where you're zooming in from.
Hi, this is Wendy from Queens.
Welcome.
Where's Queens?
It is, if you went to Manhattan and you were in the 50s, 59th Street, and then you took a bridge across, you would be in Queens. Where Brooklyn is more on the tip off of Manhattan.
Okay.
That's funny. Someone just asked me that and I looked it up.
Well,
good answer.
If you're going to tell people where you are, I could say I'm in Hamburg. I could be in Hamburg, Pennsylvania, or Hamburg, Germany,
or Hamburg, New Jersey. There's lots.
Is there Hamburg?
There's lots of Hamburgs around.
So
yes.
There may be other Queens.
Yeah, it's nice.
That's true. That is.
You gave people a visual because people are like, oh yeah, Queens, New York, but they have no clue if they haven't really been there. So
yeah.
What can we do for you today?
Wow, this listening to your intro, I feel like it relates to my question for sure. I feel like being upset or a rolling upset, I feel like sometimes I have great conversations with my boss at work, and then I'm on a high, and then I have not so great conversations, or it doesn't turn out the way I think it should, and then I I was left off a meeting, or I get frustrated.
I
But then
don't,
oh,
it's very interesting, but I have another answer for you entirely that probably will answer the question you have about how to relate to your boss.
okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
It comes from being true to yourself. See, I think it's my experience that you suppress your truth for fear of consequence. That if you say what's true for you, there will be pushback, and you don't want the pushback, so you suppress yourself. How's that?
No, that's very accurate.
And
Yes.
I truly believe that is the essence of the upset that you experience in life, that you are not being willing to be honest with yourself first, and then be bold as if what you have to say matters. Then I think that would handle upset for you completely. You just wouldn't have to go there anymore. But upsets for you are a way of avoiding confrontation.
And here's the thing. If you have that avoidance, there's a gap between you and real time. And it sets you up for that rolling highs and lows, as opposed to your boss saying, wow, this was great, Wendy. And you have this genuine thank you, as opposed to, wow, finally, I've been recognized. And then you realize you were not invited to a meeting, either inadvertently or, and then it's like, oh, they don't
Appreciate
Yes, that's
if you've been being boldly you, and I'm not saying, Shia is not saying speaking your truth is it like a data dump on somebody, because somebody could hear this and go, oh, that's right, I'm not telling my truth.
Well,
Mom, you should have come
no,
to visit
no,
me for
no.
Christmas.
no. Yeah.
That's not what he's
No,
talking about.
I'm not talking about dumping on people. I'm talking about being honest with yourself about what you want, what you need, how you see things, and not doing it in resistance to someone else. But you see, you have the idea that if you really are straight, you'll be rejected.
Yeah, that it's funny because I feel like that piece of like I don't feel listened to. Like I feel like I get that's the where
Yeah, but you don't feel listened to because you are not saying things straight that you believe to be your truth. Should I tread out on the skinny branches?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Well, I hope I don't step on a rotten one and I fall to my demise. However, I'm sure that with Madhu, your husband, if he is going down a path that you see is not supporting his well-being, you don't intercede. You don't say something because
Or you try to couch it in it's I think Julie was talking about it, or how to train her dog with kissing noises.
Yeah.
And so if I also know that if you have to give him medicine, you put it like in a pill pocket, or you wrap it in hamburger or something to make it palatable. But I have a feeling that when you need to deliver something that you believe will be perceived as something he doesn't want to hear, you couch it in so much batting that by the if you put enough sugar around a pill, you're going to make them sick from the sugar, even if the pill is accurate.
That's funny because sometimes he calls me Pollyanna because I'm so like so I think that's very accurate. That is yes.
See, here's the other thing. You have truths and then you deny yourself your truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what you
no.
And then you say, well, you justify not going for what you want or what you need. and how you see it should be, and you give yourself the reasons why not to go for your life. And you see, this happens in all aspects of our lives, Wendy. I mean, everywhere.
Now, by the way, you're nodding. I'm just reminding you this is audio.
Sorry. Yes.
Not
I
about-
just, it's just so, I just feel like the arrow hit the target. Like, you know, sometimes you have, I think I know what you're going to say. It's like, but it was very different than what I had thought.
Yes, it's instantaneous transformation. And then what's happening is I'm watching you see it ripple out into, oh, in this aspect at work, and this aspect at home, and this aspect
Because
at my house.
everything is reflective of the way you're being. So when you get in tune with your truth and start operating through it, life becomes easy. But when you try to soften the edges of your truth so that it's acceptable, well, in order for it to become acceptable, it has to fall into their point of view. It has to fit what they believe. And what you believe and what they believe is not the same. See, but if you're true to yourself, they can get your reality. They can see what's true for you. But if you try to soften it too much, it's like Ariel said, you put too much sugar on the pill and they get diabetes.
Yes.
Well, also, I think, and this was something I used to wrestle with early on in our career. I could get an instantaneous hit on somebody, and I would often try to talk around it because I didn't want to hurt their feelings. And if you talked around it too much, it was the same effect as lying or being dishonest. It was like I wasn't saying, look, you are a beautiful woman, Wendy, and you're being much too hard on yourself about how, you know, you're gorgeous. I would talk around like, you know, sometimes people they underestimate how they look. And like I'd make it very general rather than very specific. And specificity and honesty, not done to change or hurt, has a transformative effect, which you just experienced because Shya said something direct and honest, not to hurt or change you.
And I was careful not to be specific because I could give you specifics that are very dead on accurate.
But if we go to what we were talking with Julie, it's like we could talk about the specific of the kids in the stairwell and how she spoke to the staff of this other principal, but you have to keep backing up and knowing that the specific is reflective of the global.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how you're being is everywhere. The way you are is like your DNA. The way you are in one situation, you are in all situations, as far as your self-expression is concerned.
I keep wanting to ask you about this one specific, but I feel like it is related global. So I think I go in and upset, and then Madhu and I will, in the guise of venting, you complain to each other about the situation at work, and I feel like I'm creating, and then I'm now, well,
that's a real problem, by the way. See,
yeah.
You go into agreement with Madhu about complaints is really a problem because he does not need that. In fact, it supports that mechanism in him that complains about where he is and what he's doing, rather than his realizing that he is the author of his life and what he's doing is what he really wants to do.
You've trained him to not look and see and be honest with you because you aren't honest with him. So if he has an issue at work, you're like, yeah. Similarly to what we were talking about with Julie, it's like her staff comes and complains about the other school's kids in the stairwell, and she doesn't manage their upset. It's a fact those kids are in the stairwell, but if they're upset, that's on them. You go into agreement, because it would be really unfortunate if next time you were upset at work, he didn't go into agreement with you.
That's true. Yes. Yes.
So you've trained each other to be vent partners rather than
to be
sound
honest,
partners.
to be honest with each other, because see, transformation, Wendy, happens in a state of honesty, scrupulous honesty. You know, not. See, if you're honest about something, the third principle is anything you see and allow it to be exactly as it is. So anything you see and are honest about completes itself instantaneously. Anything you see is over the moment you see it. If you don't resist it or complain about it, it's just a fact. And you guys have gone into agreement with each other and agreed not to get fully engaged in transformation.
Shya and I both have upset triggers.
Never.
They're not big, they're not deep, and they're not wide, but they're pretty normal. Every once in a while, Shya will get triggered. In particular, this, we have a few, I'm sure, but this one, in politics. Like if we drive down our road, there are signs for Republicans and signs for Democrats. And then it doesn't really matter what side we come down on. It starts a conversation about how come they can't see that this is, like where he starts to upset himself over any instability or political tension in our country. And I don't, quote, listen and agree. It's more how to guide or support him in stepping back from
letting go of
that. So sometimes I'll just go, aren't the leaves pretty? And then we laugh because clearly, or I'll say, how did we get here? Or he will. So for me, my trigger tends to be more family oriented. So I'll have an interaction with one or the other of my sisters and I'll find something unsettling. And and I don't generally complain about them after an unsettling moment. I complain about myself. I'm really clear that if I get unsettled over there, I think I'm a bad person. So similarly, he'll be like, did you speak to your sisters today? Or it's like we guide each other past that, or support each other in not complaining about that which is habitual to complain about. And as we've done that, it's rare that we dip into those things. We can talk about them like, wow, I really wanted to beat on myself today, instead of, wow, I'm an awful person. One is talking about that thought process goes by, and the other, you've jumped into it with both feet and you're advocating for it.
See, I have seen you, Wendy, being passionately engaged in your life. And then when you're not,
you're apologetic.
And obvious that you've gotten lost in an upset. If you resist being upset, it keeps you upset, which is really, what a paradox. But when you resist anything, that's where you get stuck. If you see you're upset, that's enough for it to end in your seeing it, but not to try to get rid of it, just to notice it. And I've seen you be fully engaged in so many ways. In fact, you've pulled your husband back into the moment frequently. I see you as a power source in your relationship with your husband, not to set up a conflict there.
And I'm sure he pulls you out of it at times too in ways that we don't
But,
see.
but what Ariel said was really true, that you've formed a
Complaint alliance.
that's right.
Yeah.
And that
Yes.
alliance keeps you from your greatness. It keeps you in your mediocrity, your little self, not your greater being.
Now, one caveat about what I said about how we support each other out of upset, it's really important to recognize that if I'm upset and Shai starts talking politics, for instance, I could say the same thing, same words, but it has that finger wagging quality to it that is me working on him to make him a better
Yeah.
person. It really is about being centered yourself and going from there, and being honest yourself and going from there.
Yeah. No,
Recognize that if you're upset, the circumstances did not do it.
See, otherwise, what I say to you is upsetting. Otherwise, what I say to you becomes a justifier for you to jump into an upset. If you blame the circumstances for how you feel, then you're forever lost in upset.
And when Shai says what I say to you, it's not what Shai, the individual, what I, Shai, what I, Ariel, what I, your boss, your husband, your in-laws, everything is grounds for upset when you're pre-upset.
And when it's in disagreement with what you want or think you want. See, everybody thinks they want. Now, I was out on the ocean yesterday and this really nice boat went by. Oh, because it just was magnificent. It wasn't that big, but it was very seaworthy and powerful, and I enjoyed looking at it. I'll tell you, if I owned that boat, I wouldn't be any happier than I am right now. Because that isn't going to make me feel better. Getting what you want or think you want will never make you feel better. At least not ultimately. Interimly, perhaps, because you will have won something.
Well, you said it earlier. You get the acknowledgement from your boss, and interimly you have a high. But
Right.
when
But
you
then,
go
then
high
you fall right back into that mind game of beating on yourself for being the way you are, rather than notice that that conversation exists in you and leave it alone.
okay.
You know,
Yeah.
this friend of mine that I was out with yesterday on the ocean, when we were texting back and forth afterwards, he said that I was a great shrink. But I said nothing to try to get him to be different than he is or see anything differently. All I did was be myself.
and listen.
And listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wendy, darling, you have a truth and you know your truth. But the question is, will you follow your truth?
One of the things that you may get snagged on in following your truth is you have an internal set of standards that you either inherited or developed. And yesterday, we are recording this before the holidays. I went out and I did some holiday shopping. And so I went to a mall. And over the course of COVID, I bought 4 pair of very funky pants at Walmart. And they're all tie-dyed in different colors. And I adore them. But in my internal standard, having grown up in a family that was a retail family for clothing and fashion. And
higher end clothing.
Yeah.
I'm wearing pretty silly clothes. So I used to have all these conversations and fought with myself. And then I bought masks that was tie-dyed because I find them amusing. And they're also very, very comfortable and effective. So I thought, okay, I'm going to get something that's fun. And finally, I recognized that I was having a fight with myself about these things due to my standards from the past. And I looked and I'm like, I enjoy this. This is not a statement for or against. I'm expressing myself, and I'm not even expressing myself. I'm wearing these clothes. When I went out yesterday, I go into one store and they're like, great pants. And I said, thank you. I got them at Walmart. I go to another store. great mask. I'm like, thank you very much. It's very comfortable. Effective. I got it on Amazon. I go to the next one, great haircut. And I thought, either this is a new strategy to try and get people to come back and buy something for you, or people are just really appreciating me today. But I found there wasn't a like, yes, I'm finally doing my life right. There was not a commensurate up or down depending on how people were perceiving me, because I was not fighting with myself. So I could just say, thank you. And if you like this, this is where you can have it too, as opposed to having it be a reflection on whether I was doing my life correctly.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you both. I feel like my heart is, I don't know, it just feels alive in there.
Well, that's good. That's really good news. I like that.
It is good news, but it just, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're so
Thank you.
wow. Again, everyone, thank you for listening. This is our last show of 2022. We are excited to have done all the virtual seminars, to work with you guys as well. And we have lots of great things upcoming, including some in-person courses in 2023. And for certain, transformational time and project management is the weekend seminar that's coming up. We will have people from all over the world. You are invited, and which is a great lead into next week's episode.
What is next week's episode? Oh, you matter.
Yep, you matter. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for being a listener. If you enjoyed the podcast, feel free to share it with your friends. Feel free to leave a review. If neither of those appeal to you, don't do it. Just thank you for being here. We'll be back next week.
So come on
And
back.
next year. So come on back.
And don't miss
Being here.